A really interesting talk from Margret Franssen and Josien today about buzzwords and blind spots. And I think it is best that I leave the floor now to Margret and Josien to introduce themselves and start with this very, very interesting topic. The floor is yours, ladies.
Yes, I'm going to share my screen then. I'm working on 2 devices because my camera is not working for my laptop anymore. Oops. So welcome everyone. So I'll quickly tell you what we're going to talk about this session. We're going to talk about language in research and policy because we use many words that we find normal and that we find that are neutral, but they are not always inclusive. So we do this from all the good intentions, but words can mean different things to different people. So they can create either distance without us knowing, but they can also pull us in. So today we're going to share what we have learned from the I4PH participation panels. We're going to share that with you. There are also a few panel members attending today. So the program that we have for the session is, first we're going to tell you a bit about the panels that I was just talking about. And then we're going to switch to Josien. Josien is also a panel member, but she also did research into low literacy. And she's going to talk about the use of clear language. And after that, we're going to switch to a word bingo. And the word bingo contains words that we as a panel, that we come across quite often and that elicit some emotions with us. Then we're going to reflect a bit on it and share some key lessons from us. And also, please feel free to ask any questions and don't worry about making mistakes. We are also still making mistakes. I'm also educated as a health researcher, so I'm very much taught the formal jargon that we use. So I'm also making mistakes still. So we are. I'll quickly introduce Josien and me. Josien, as I mentioned, has done research on low literacy. She did that as part of her education as a social worker, which she finished. And she's also a panel member. I am Margret, and I'm a postdoctoral researcher at I4PH and at Utrecht University. And I'm studying with and about participation panels. I'm also finishing my PhD research at the Wageningen University, which is about poverty in the Netherlands and how people experience that, and how we can include experiential knowledge into giving people support. I also have my own experiential knowledge on poverty. I grew up in a family where we didn't really have a lot of money. We also had some other issues, so I try to incorporate that in my work. There's also some other great people I work with. That's Jantien from left to right, Jantien van Berkel and Carlijn Kamphuis from Utrecht University, and Hilje van der Horst and Harm Veling from Wageningen University. And of course the panel, but we don't have a picture of them yet. A few of them are here today. Linda's there, Monica, Shai, and Frank, and Josien, of course. And I hope I don't leave anyone out, but those are the people I saw entering the meeting. So I quickly will tell you a bit about participation panels. So I4PH decided that they needed a participation panel, so a panel of people that have knowledge about living in vulnerable circumstances. Because research about lifestyle and health is often done about people, but not with people. And as a result, the research and the policy that comes from that doesn't fully connect to people's lives. So today, as an example, sometimes it contains language that can alienate people. And then people retract from the research, for example. So the goal that we have is to make the research more relevant and also make it more inclusive and more just. And we do that by working together with people with lived experience. So what we do is that we bring together researchers with us, and we are not only advising, we are working together with them. So for example, we helped with proposals, if they got a budget or not. So we also make some decisions from time to time, which is, I think, very nice. And we reflect on research, and researchers can join us at any stage of their research, preferably at the early stage. So maybe even before a research question, but also during the research. So, or maybe at the end when you want to share your results, we can think along on how can you make sure that the information also reaches the people that the research was about. The condition that we have for now is that the researchers have to be connected to one of the EWUU cities. So TU Eindhoven, Wageningen University, Utrecht University, or UMC Utrecht. So what we do is we combine lived experiences and perspectives, and we reflect on research, as I just mentioned. But we sometimes also find new topics of research that are often overlooked. Current themes that we're talking about in our panels are informal care within formal systems, and of course, language in research and policy. And we organize sessions on understandable language and the emotional impact of language. So first today, Josine is going to talk about the first part, and then I'll talk a bit more about the emotional impact. Are there any questions about this part? I don't see any hands. Then we'll go to Josine. So I'll stop sharing for a bit, and then Josine can open her presentation.
Well, thanks, Margaret, very much for the introduction. So I'm Josine, what Margaret told you already. Let me see if I can share. Yeah, I think everyone can see my screen.
Yes.
Okay. Well, here it says, hello, everyone, welcome. But then the letters are placed everywhere you want. I'm sorry in advance that my presentation is in Dutch, the lettering on the screens, but I will try to tell it in English. You will. My presentation will be about low literacy, and this contains that people have trouble reading, writing, and of calculation, and it's not like analphabetism. I'm not sure that's the English word, where people cannot read at all. People can read, but they not understand it correctly, like the researchers mean. For example, I spoke with a woman who has low literacy, and I talked about, I can put it on slides, and then we talked further with your own experience, and she was like, what's a slide? So it took me back to, I have to tell her what the slide is. So for me, it was difficult to explain because it's so normal. It's normal language for the Dutch people and so on. Here it's about the health, but wait, I'm going too fast. Because how many people do your guys think there are low literate in the Netherlands? You can put your hands, I don't know.
Yeah, you can put it in the chat maybe. People can put it in the chat.
Yeah. I'm not sure how I can see the chat now. Maybe someone can tell me when there's a couple of answers in the chat already, or I would tell them.
Someone says 5%, 15%, 10, 20, 2, 13.4. Very specific.
That's really good. Yeah. No, and new research found out that on every 5 people in the Netherlands is low literate. And at these 5 people, more of them have the Dutch language as their mother language. So it's not always the people who are refugees or come as expats or anything. For me, these numbers are really mind-blowing. I could not understand them. And I was like, how is this possible? Because you live in the Netherlands and you did some high school and things like that. But the more I researched it, the more surprised or amazed I was, not in a good way, but the numbers are really mind-blowing to me. Here you can see also the connection with the health vaardigheden. I'm not sure how to say that in English. That you see that 9% of the people with low literacy, that is this one. Where's my mouse? I don't see it. That's the right corner with the people on it. They live in good health and 25% live in very bad health. And on the left, in the round, in the ring, you can see how much, what the circumstances are, or the, yeah, what makes people experience a bad health situation. Oh, here's already the number, that 1 out of 5 has trouble reading, writing, and of calculating. And if you think about that number, you have to know someone in your own life, or thing. For me, it's like I did my internship in a social work organization, and there's like a blind spot for it, and that's because there's disbelief, because in the Netherlands you have school you have to finish. They don't want to problematize it. They don't want to ask the question, because if the other doesn't come with it, they don't want to say, oh, you've got this and this, but maybe there's nothing like that. There's also shame with the persons themselves. We don't know. The professionals don't believe it. It's not visible. And many signals for maybe if you have someone in your practice can be there's no email address. They only look at the text and the eyes are not moving. They have trouble with the internet banking system. They always have excuses like they forgot their glasses, or they have like a poor handwriting, or some people even come with the mitellas to the appointment so they don't have to write. So for me that was big, like they go so far just to hide they are low literate. There are some tips. You can make audio messages in your WhatsApp, so no texting. Don't talk harder. Just keep your voice regular volume. And for example, if you are this, ask them at the end of the appointment from, sometimes I get to hear that I use too much jargon, what Margaret was talking about. Can you explain to me what we just said? What I just said. Yeah, and here you see the cost for the Netherlands in 2018, and that's over $1 billion or million. I don't know what English cost is again, because it's over een miljard euro, we say in Dutch, and that's really a thing. The Hague is acknowledging that there are trouble, but they will push it on to the next 4 years, and then the next. We see this happening, but the next cabinet, I don't know what that is in English, will take it on, has to take it on. There are some organizations that are really helpful, or sites. That's called Steffi, steffi.nl, and that's a site that explains about, where's my mouse now? The trouble things in, yes, I'm back. They trouble the difficult language for in easy language. And you have got the foundation, it's called Stichting Lezen en Schrijven, and they do a lot for people who are low literate, also for the people with Dutch as their main mother language. So are there any questions?
No questions. Maybe some of us are lecturers, I think. And Josine, you also mentioned that there was a student that was low literate, right? And she At the end, she finished her education, even with all the...
Yeah, she sought help at the another education program that she let people record the books she had to read for her school, so she could hear them, and then she could answer the questions on the exams and so on. So I think that's really creative and good thinking of her.
Yeah. And probably a very good memory, right? That's also what you...
Yeah, people with low literacy have good memories because, for example, there was a truck driver who was low literate and he knew from where to go left because he was counting, for example, the white houses. So he knew, okay, after the third house, I have to go left and then first right. And that he knew, but he could not read the signs on the road signs. So they have like a memory that we can't imagine, I think.
If there are no questions for Josien, I'm going to continue the presentation. There's always some... Oops. So I'll tell you a bit more about the emotionality of language. So Josien mentioned already, of course, clear language is important. That's because people can be low literate. There's more people than we often think that are low literate, but also because people encounter in vulnerable circumstances, they encounter a lot of stress, and that also capacitates your that also influences your capacity to understand what's being said and what's written. So short words and B level always help. And as a panel, we think it should be a standard. But even those clear words can trigger emotions, and they can make us feel distant or uncomfortable. They can also connect, and they can also pull us in. So we're going to talk a bit more about that. So on a personal note, I mentioned already, I come from a family where we had limited financial means. I started at VMBO, which is, I think, I don't know if all of you know that, but it's in high school, it's like you have certain levels, and that's quite in the middle. And I climbed the way up. I don't want to say climbed up, but I went to university after. And when I was in the lecture rooms, I studied health sciences, and I noticed that there were many lectures about the place I came from. So people were the lecturers were talking about disadvantaged neighborhoods, unmatched families, making unhealthy life choices. And I had the feeling I was under a magnifying glass, but I wasn't really seen. So that was quite contrasting. I felt very distanced from the other students, and I didn't even know if they have the same background or not. But because the language that was being used, I felt that there was a distance. I felt like I was a subject, and that subject was making unhealthy lifestyle choices. My dad, for example, smoking a lot, and they were talking about smoking as it's an unhealthy lifestyle, it's a bad habit, and of course we know that it's a bad habit, but it was for him a way to deal with an enormous amount of stress. And that was for him, the only thing he had to deal with is stress. That was not really being acknowledged. They were talking about disadvantaged neighborhoods where we were living in, which I didn't really felt like that was the only thing defining that neighborhood. It's also a very nice community where people take care of each other. I go with my neighbor to the hospital after this meeting. So yeah, it felt like I was being reduced. And that led me to quit that year of study. Later, I joined again, but yeah, it was very hard in the beginning. What I also noticed is that these letters, I think, for most of us, they scare us. But for me, this led me to not opening letters at all from the government or from the municipality, because there was so little money in our household. I had to use it for school. I had to use it for books, laptops. So I was ignoring the rest. And language played a big part of that. As soon as you open the letters, it's things in bold. It feels very aggressive. So I felt scared all the time. When the postman walked through the streets, I was already tightened in my body. So as I told you, I try to incorporate my lived experience in research. So I talked about it with some panel members, and it was very recognizable for them. And everyone stated, yes, I notice people use a lot of formal language. It's not only difficult to understand, but it also creates distance. You know, it's language that I don't use all the time. So, for example, from the government or municipalities, and it can get overwhelming because you're being confronted with it every time. And institutions, but also universities, because many people see them as just another institution, can feel very distant. So formal language can feel very heavy or stressful. And as a result, people might feel judged, or they might feel uncomfortable, and they also might withdraw. So we talked about it in the panels. And as I mentioned, many people recognize this. So what we did, we looked at language used in policy. So we reviewed letters from the government, from the municipality of Utrecht. There is a wonderful student doing research into this. Her name is Rosemarijn Wortelboer. And we also looked a bit at language that is being used in research. And together we created a word bingo. It's kind of as a joke. And you can go to, for example, a conference, and you can get a bingo if your entire bingo is full. And we filled it with words that trigger reactions with us or emotions. And because we usually work in Dutch, we first made the bingo in Dutch, but we also created an English version. So I'm going to share them both on the screen. I'll do this in the session in English, of course, but for the Dutch participants, and you can also see the Dutch words that we use a lot. And here I ask for the help of the panel members. So if you want, any of you, pick a word that elicits most emotion for you, or something you want to tell me about. Who can I give the word? Yes, Shai.
Hello, hello. I think my typical trigger word are things around self-reliance and self-sufficiency, because I come across as someone who is very self-reliant and very self-sufficient. And for that reason, people tend to assume that I do well, because I can independently fill in forms and make phone calls and do all sorts of things that people with my disabilities typically struggle with in different ways. But just because I can do them doesn't mean I enjoy doing them. They aren't incredibly stressful. They don't take a disproportionate amount of energy. So it always feels a bit like trickery to call me self-reliant or self-sufficient, because I struggle a lot in being these things, and it doesn't come naturally to me. So the association that people have is positive, but the association that I have is negative.
Thank you, Shai. Is there someone else who wants to tell something about the words on the screen? A lot of us are shy. Okay.
I like Bench's neighborhood.
Yes, and why is that?
Because I grew up in this neighborhood together with you, and I think there's a negative
connotation, like a negative sphere, I think you mean.
right?
Negative
build. Negative build.
Negative image.
Yeah, there's a negative image of it. And when I grew up in the first times, I was kind of scared because there were a lot of people, different than my old neighborhood. So we were the only Dutch people in
in our street.
In our street, yeah. But when I grew up with those people, I even liked it more than being in the other neighborhood.
Yeah, exactly. Frank is my brother, so he's in the panel as well. So of course we grew up together, and we grew the first years of our lives. We lived in a neighborhood that was bordering like super rich neighborhoods, very white, very highly educated, and I think we were like the how do you call it, like the odd duckling, the ones that were standing out. And after my parents got divorced, we moved to another neighborhood that was way more diverse. And yeah, as you mentioned, like, I think because the image that we were brought up with the first years, the disadvantaged neighborhood, and you cannot go there, you cannot go to the other part of town. But it was way nicer, much more community driven, not as distant. So yeah, I think Linda is also raising her hand.
Test. Hi. Okay, so one of the words that usually irks me the wrong way is leefstijlkeuze or lifestyle choice, because it heavily implies that a lot of the consequences of those choices are like brought onto the people by themselves because of the things that they choose that they shouldn't have. While in reality, that's so much more complex, and there's a lot more behind that, why people act the way they do under certain circumstances. And that I think that one's a bit triggering for me, because a lot of those my people, pretty much me, we don't really have much of a choice when stress levels are high as they are, etc., etc. So that one, yeah.
Yeah, I recognize that. That's one of the things I noticed in the lecture rooms where there was being talked about lifestyle choice, and I was like, well, it's not really a choice, you know, it's the only things that we can afford at this moment, and you have to make some decisions. So yeah. Monica.
Mag ik het in het Nederlands doen?
Yes, I can translate after that if you want. Yeah.
Nou, als ik de woorden zo zie, dan merk ik dat als je bezig bent met bepaalde thema's, dat je gewend raakt aan de woorden. Dus dan vind je ze op een gegeven moment zelf ook normaal. Maar eigenlijk vind ik ze heel beschuldigend. Zo bijna allemaal. Het is alsof er een afstand komt van jullie zijn minder, dus neem maar doelgroep of kansarm, moeilijk bereikbaar. Het zijn allemaal negatieve emoties die je daaraan koppelt. Dus ja, dat is inderdaad niet helpend als je iemand wil bereiken en werkelijk iemand wil helpen. Dat schept een afstand.
Yeah, I'll translate a bit for the people who don't speak Dutch. So what Monica mentioned is that we use these words a lot and we encounter them all the time, especially when you work in research or policy, and they become part of your vocabulary. Also for me, and I come from a background where these words were never being used. I also talked about poverty, vulnerable groups, lifestyle choices, well, maybe less, but disadvantage. I started to incorporate that language into my own language. But the words also that Monica said, all these words, they show that there's either a hierarchy or there's a us and them. And even when it's well intended, it can create a distance between people. I haven't picked out a word yet, so I want to endorse one of our panel members, and one of the terms she really doesn't like is hard to reach groups. And that is because she says we are not hard to reach. Just go out and try to find people, as Josien mentioned, for example, with low literacy, there's always someone you know, and start there. Try to talk to people, go out in the neighborhoods. There's always like neighborhood houses in the Netherlands where you can go and try to start. There's also initiatives like Sterk uit Armoede, or the Armoedecoalitie, it's a poverty coalition that can help you. And it's also just start doing it. But it also says something about our mindset. We as researchers sometimes talk about people that they are hard to reach, but maybe we ourselves as researchers are hard to reach, because we, as the panel member in question says, can sometimes be in our ivory tower, and then we can feel very formal and very distant. So it's also good to reflect on that, I think. A word that we also often see, and Monica helped me with that as well, is poverty. We often talk about poverty, and that can be very helpful when you want to address stigma or you want to talk about injustice. But when you want to recruit people that live in those circumstances, usually people don't feel like they live in poverty. First of all, because it's a stigmatized word. And also, people tend to think, I'm not living in poverty because I still have this and that, and there are people that are way worse off. So they don't want to take the stage. So what Monica helped me to identify is that when we want to recruit people, that we, in folders, we put, are you living with a little budget, a tiny budget? Do you have trouble making ends meet? Terms like that. I also think, Josien, you raised a hand.
Yes, I did, because with the people with low literacy, there are lots of initiatives that are at the neighborhood houses. But if it's called something like you have trouble with reading or anything like that, people don't show up because they're ashamed if other people see them going in at that time. So normally they're also, I think it was in Eindhoven, but not sure. They start with reading recipes. Do you have trouble reading recipes? And then during those meetings, they can find out if people are living with low literacy, and so they continue their own road. So don't name it exactly what it is. Don't name something like from, oh, what Margret said, are you living in poverty? Come Wednesday was yesterday, the 15th of April, to this neighborhood house, but give it another name that people show up more.
Yeah, exactly. I think this also relates to some of the overarching things that we see happening. So I think I'll close down the bingo and go to the next slide, because we also have 10 minutes left, and I don't know if there's any questions. So what we see across these words is, as Linda Scheibot said, they place the responsibility on the individual, and the problems are framed as a personal problem and not as a result from structural issues or structural shortcomings. So we try to reframe language. Martina did that in the beginning. She talked about unhealthy living environments and not unhealthy life choices, for example. So usually the words that we see, they ignore the wider systemic context. So poverty and stress are not linked to broader conditions. They also create a hierarchy. So for example, words like low literate can be stigmatizing as well, or low educated, low socioeconomic position, or disadvantaged. It suggests a hierarchy. So it's good to step away from that hierarchy. When we talk about low education, for example, it's still very hard to find a word to replace it. What in the Netherlands we try to do sometimes is talk about practical versus theoretical education, but sometimes that's not even covering it, because also lower education can be very theoretical. So usually we just talk about the level itself, for example, VMBO or MBO, instead of lower education. What is important that over time, the repetition of those words, as Monica also mentioned, they can make the words feel heavier or more loaded, or sometimes for us as researcher, even that the emotion takes away from it, that there's no emotion left anymore in the words. So some practical tips to close everything off. I think we have 5 more minutes. So first off, write in clear and simple language at B1 or A2 level. You can use the guidelines from Stichting Lezen en Schrijven, but there's also a great app, Lees Simple. And what Josien just mentioned, that's steffi.nl, I think, right? It's also in the chat. Marloes put it in the chat. Also, use first people language. So, for example, people living with financial means, limited financial means, and not poor people. Best tip, work with people that have lived experience. Include them in your research. In the beginning, it might be, you have to find your way. But for me, it worked out great. I love doing it. But they can help you understand the emotional impact of language. We are working on a handout for researchers about language. This will be in Dutch, but we're also going to try to translate it into English. That's not because we're being lazy, but that's because English words sometimes have a different connotation. So it's very hard to make a direct translation. Are there any questions for us? I think there's a question, but I cannot read it. Is there someone that can read it to me? Because if I go to chat, for some reason I get kicked out.
It says, Meike, very interesting topics. This probably will not fit time-wise during this session, but perhaps you could share a bit more about how the panels were created. Is it like a fixed panel, or do they evolve over time? And are the panels only available to EWUU researchers or Institute for Preventive Health, or also beyond that?
Yes, okay, so the panels started from advisory boards that were already active in Utrecht and Wageningen, and they're still running. If people are not EWUU researchers, they can also go there. But usually there's always someone in your team that works at Wageningen or Utrecht or Eindhoven. So try to make that connection, that would be great. You asked, how did we select the panel? So 5 years ago, my colleagues put an advertisement on a volunteer website, and that's how they recruited the first people. And they really took language already in their mindset. So they didn't talk about poverty. They recruited with, do you have daily worries about money or housing situation, health, or housing, health, yeah, terms like that. And then they started to recruit people. I think first few people started coming in, and then there was the snowball sampling happening. I think it also helped. I also tried to incorporate my own personal network. As Josien said, we always know someone. And it's good to normalize things. It's also good to be reciprocal. So talk about your own experiences. Make yourself a bit, make it relatable. So that's how we started, and we are now in Utrecht, we are with 12 to 14 members, and there's sometimes people leaving, sometimes new people coming in. In Wageningen, there's now I think 4 or 5 members that are there a lot, and in Eindhoven we are with a group of 5 to 6. Josien, you had raised your hand.
Yes, I did again because I've got a newsletter of Movisie, the site Movisie, and that's just a coincidence. It says how to put an ervaringsraad together. Hoe zet je een ervaringsraad op? So that's really also, maybe people can look at movisie.nl. I will put it in the chat.
That's a good tip. It just came out today, right?
Yeah. I was like, wow, as they are listening.
Martina?
Yeah, Thank you, Margret, Josien, and actually all the panel members as well for sharing this story and very interesting talk. I hope that a lot of people will listen and learn from it. What I'm still struggling with a little bit is that I am so used to certain terminology, and I am not aware of that it is a sensitive word, for example. So I would love to learn new and alternative words, and just know that I at least try to avoid the sensitive words, but I am not doing it on purpose that I use a sensitive word. Anyways, I hope there will be alternative words. And again, thank you, Margret, Josien, and the panel members for sharing your story. It was very interesting.
Thank you. And as a note, we in the reports that we're going to make, we try to find alternatives. And also, everyone makes mistakes. We all still do. I mean, the words are so much incorporated in our language, so yeah.
That's what I tried to explain with the word slide. You know, I was making a PowerPoint and I call it slides, but then you have to explain what it is. And I was like, I don't know how to explain this in easy language. I was like, okay.
Yes.
But that's good.
Let's close this lunch and learn. It's 1 o'clock. And thank you for all participants, people who listened and who contributed. So see you next time.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Thank you.